Welcome back to another episode of The Deep Dive, where we explore the strategies, trends, and innovations shaping the life sciences industry.
Today, we're unpacking a topic that has gained huge momentum over the last few years: decentralized clinical trials, or DCTs. These trials were once considered experimental, but now they're quickly moving into the mainstream. The question everyone's asking is, what's next?
Decentralized clinical trials fundamentally change how studies are conducted. Instead of requiring participants to visit centralized sites for every procedure, more activities can now happen remotely. That could mean telemedicine visits, wearable devices for continuous monitoring, home nursing visits, even direct-to-patient delivery of study drugs.
And the global push behind this is unmistakable. Regulators, sponsors, CROs, and patients themselves are all driving the shift. The COVID-19 pandemic accelerated adoption out of necessity, but the benefits have proven hard to ignore. Now the conversation has moved from, can we do this, to how do we make this sustainable and scalable?
One of the biggest advantages of DCTs is patient access. Traditional trials often exclude people who live far from major research centers or those who can't afford frequent travel and time off work. Decentralized models remove many of those barriers. Suddenly, participation is open to a broader, more diverse population, something regulators and sponsors have both been calling for.
Exactly. Diversity in clinical research isn't just about fairness, it's about data quality. When trials reflect real patient populations, results are more reliable and applicable. By reducing geographic and logistical hurdles, DCTs have the potential to make trials more inclusive, which ultimately makes the therapies more relevant.
But with that opportunity comes complexity. Running a decentralized trial across multiple countries means grappling with uneven regulations, technology infrastructure, and patient expectations. What works in the US may not translate seamlessly to Europe, Asia, or low and middle income countries.
Take data privacy, for example. In Europe, the General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR, sets strict rules on how patient data is collected, stored, and transferred. In the US, HIPAA applies, but the frameworks are different. If you're running a decentralized trial that spans both regions, you need to design systems that meet multiple standards simultaneously.
And that leads into technology. Wearables, apps, electronic patient-reported outcomes, all of these are central to decentralized trials. But not every region has the same level of digital adoption. In some countries, internet access or smartphone penetration is lower, which raises the question, how do you ensure equity when digital access itself is uneven?
This is where sponsors need to balance ambition with realism. You can't just roll out a one-size-fits-all DCT strategy. Instead, you need a flexible model that can adapt to local infrastructure, regulatory frameworks, and cultural expectations.
Another important piece is the investigator and site relationship. DCTs don't eliminate the need for clinical sites, they transform their role. Instead of being the sole hub for patient activity, sites are becoming coordination centers. They still play a critical role in oversight and safety, but they need new tools and training to manage hybrid models.
And that's a key word: hybrid. While the term decentralized trial makes it sound like everything is remote, in practice, most studies are hybrid. Some procedures will always require an in-person visit: imaging, complex blood work, or specialized infusions. The real innovation is figuring out which elements can safely and effectively move outside the site and which need to stay centralized.
From a regulatory standpoint, agencies are signaling strong support. The FDA has released guidance encouraging the use of decentralized approaches, and the EMA, MHRA, and Health Canada are doing the same. They see DCTs as a way to modernize trials, improve diversity, and accelerate timelines. But at the same time, they're clear that patient safety and data integrity can't be compromised.
And that's where challenges like remote monitoring, data validation, and informed consent come into play. If a patient consents electronically, how do you ensure they truly understand what they're signing up for? If a wearable device collects continuous data, how do you verify accuracy and prevent tampering? These are the questions regulators are pushing sponsors to answer.
It's also worth highlighting the impact on CROs and service providers. The global move toward DCTs is reshaping the competitive landscape. Companies that traditionally specialized in site management are now expanding into digital platforms, home health services, and patient engagement technologies. The lines between technology companies, CROs, and logistics providers are starting to blur.
And for sponsors, this means rethinking partnerships. Instead of working with a single CRO, you might now need a network of specialized vendors. One for technology, one for logistics, one for home nursing, and so on. The coordination piece becomes a project in itself.
But the payoff is clear. When done well, decentralized trials can reduce recruitment timelines, improve retention, and generate richer data sets. Patients feel more engaged because participation fits into their lives instead of disrupting them. And regulators get more representative data, which can ultimately support faster approvals.
The global push, then, is not just about technology adoption. It's about creating an ecosystem that can support DCTs sustainably. That includes harmonizing regulations, standardizing data formats, and building trust among patients and investigators.
And that trust piece is huge. Patients need confidence that their data is secure, that their care won't be compromised by remote participation, and that they're still being closely monitored by qualified professionals. Building that trust will take consistent communication, transparency, and evidence that decentralized models deliver safe, effective outcomes.
One of the most fascinating aspects of the global DCT movement is how different regulators are approaching it. The FDA has been supportive, but they tend to emphasize patient safety and data reliability above all else. In contrast, the EMA has been very focused on ensuring consistency across member states, especially when it comes to informed consent and remote monitoring. Meanwhile, agencies like Health Canada and the MHRA have released their own frameworks that encourage DCT adoption, but with local nuances.
That creates a real challenge for global trials. Imagine you're running a study that spans the US, Europe, and Asia. You might have one regulator insisting on paper backup for e-consent, another requiring direct source verification of remote data, and another pushing for additional cybersecurity safeguards. The result? Sponsors need flexible infrastructures that can meet the strictest common denominator while still being efficient.
We've already seen some of this play out. During the pandemic, many regulators issued emergency guidance to enable decentralized elements, things like remote consent, telemedicine visits, and drug shipment directly to patients. Now, the big question is which of those flexibilities will stay permanent? Early signs suggest that regulators want to retain what worked, but with tighter guardrails around verification and accountability.
This is where harmonization becomes critical. The industry can't afford a patchwork system where every country has a different set of rules. That slows down global development and creates inefficiencies. Groups like ICH are beginning to look at how to standardize expectations, but progress is slow. In the meantime, companies need to be proactive, building internal playbooks that account for regional differences and designing trials that can flex across borders.
Another piece that's often overlooked is the role of vendors. A decentralized trial might involve 5 or 6 different service providers: a telemedicine platform, a wearable device manufacturer, a logistics partner, a home nursing network, an e-consent provider, and of course the CRO coordinating the whole thing. That ecosystem can unlock amazing capabilities, but it also introduces risk.
If one vendor underperforms, the entire trial can be jeopardized. Imagine a wearable device that fails to capture accurate data or a courier that misses a time-sensitive delivery. Those failures don't just inconvenience the trial, they can invalidate endpoints or jeopardize patient safety. That's why vendor qualification and oversight are more important than ever in decentralized models.
Some companies are responding by building integrated vendor networks, essentially ecosystems where partners are pre-vetted, interoperable, and trained to work together. Others are investing in platforms that centralize oversight, so sponsors and CROs can see in real time how each component is performing.
This brings us to one of the biggest lessons from early DCT pilots. Integration is everything. You can have the best telemedicine system and the most advanced wearable, but if those two systems can't talk to each other and can't feed data cleanly into your EDC, then you're creating more headaches than solutions. That's why interoperability standards are becoming a major focus. Regulators, sponsors, and technology vendors are all recognizing the need for common data models, APIs, and validation frameworks.
And while that sounds technical, it has very human consequences. If a patient is wearing a device at home, but the data doesn't show up correctly in the trial database, that patient might have to repeat procedures or even be excluded from the study. That undermines trust and discourages participation. Interoperability isn't just an IT issue, it's a patient experience issue.
Another insight from early adopters is that decentralized doesn't always mean faster. In fact, the first wave of DCTs often ran into delays because of unexpected complexity. Coordinating remote staff, setting up logistics, validating digital tools, it all took time. The companies that succeeded weren't necessarily the ones who moved fastest, but the ones who planned thoroughly, trained their teams, and communicated constantly with regulators.
And communication is key. Regulators have said repeatedly that they want sponsors to come to them early if they plan to use decentralized elements. Pre-submission meetings, scientific advice sessions, even informal check-ins. They all help regulators understand the trial design and flag potential concerns before the study is launched. This proactive approach saves everyone time and reduces the risk of costly mid-study changes.
Looking ahead, one of the most exciting frontiers is the use of real-world data in conjunction with decentralized approaches. If you're already collecting digital health data from wearables and apps, you can start integrating that with claims data, EHRs, and registries. That creates a more holistic picture of patient outcomes, and it opens the door to regulatory acceptance of novel endpoints. Some agencies are already exploring how real-world evidence generated from decentralized models can support approvals or label expansions.
But again, that only works if the data is high quality. Regulators are cautious about relying on data collected outside controlled environments. That means sponsors need to show not just that the tools work, but that the processes around them, calibration, validation, monitoring, are rigorous enough to stand up in an audit or inspection.
Another interesting development is patient engagement. Decentralized trials don't just change logistics, they change the relationship between patients and sponsors. With apps and wearables, patients can often see their own data in real time. That creates new opportunities for engagement, but also new responsibilities. If a patient sees an anomaly in their data, do they call their doctor, their study coordinator? How do you manage expectations and avoid unnecessary alarm? These are the kinds of issues trial designers need to anticipate.
And let's not forget about investigators. Many physicians are enthusiastic about DCTs, but others are hesitant. They worry about losing control, about being held accountable for data collected remotely, or about how to manage patients they never see face-to-face. Training, support, and clear delineation of roles will be essential to building investigator confidence in decentralized models.
Finally, we should highlight that decentralized doesn't automatically mean cheaper. In fact, the upfront costs can be higher, investing in technology, training, logistics, and oversight. The long-term payoff comes in the form of faster recruitment, better retention, and more efficient operations. But sponsors need to be realistic about the investment required, and they need to design ROI models that capture not just cost savings, but also value from richer data and improved patient outcomes.
Another dimension worth unpacking is technology maturity. Right now, a lot of the DCT infrastructure relies on tools that were designed for other industries and then adapted for clinical research. For example, wearable devices often come from consumer tech companies that don't always build with GCP compliance in mind. That means sponsors and CROs have to retrofit validation and security measures, which slows things down.
We're starting to see purpose-built platforms emerge, devices, e-consent solutions, remote monitoring tools that are designed from the ground up with regulatory requirements in mind. That shift is critical because it reduces the amount of customization each sponsor has to do and builds regulator confidence in the data.
But technology maturity also ties into digital literacy. Not every patient has the same comfort level with wearables, apps, or remote check-ins. Older populations, or those with limited access to smartphones or reliable internet, can feel excluded if the technology isn't intuitive or if alternatives aren't offered. Successful DCTs account for this by providing training, tech support, and sometimes even loaner devices.
This raises another important point: inclusivity. One of the promises of DCTs is broader access, reaching patients who live far from trial sites or those who can't afford frequent travel. But if we don't intentionally design for accessibility, we risk reinforcing disparities. Imagine a rural patient with limited broadband trying to participate in a trial that requires daily video uploads. Without alternative pathways, that patient gets left behind.
Sponsors that excel in DCTs are already experimenting with hybrid models. Instead of going fully remote, they design flexible protocols where patients can choose between in-person and digital visits. This not only broadens participation, but also builds trust. Patients feel like they have agency, and investigators feel more comfortable because they aren't losing all physical oversight.
Now let's look at the global expansion of DCTs. The US and Europe are leading adoption, but Asia Pacific is quickly catching up. Countries like Singapore, Japan, and Australia are piloting frameworks that encourage digital health integration, and their regulators are surprisingly nimble. In fact, some of the most innovative DCT pilots have taken place in Asia because governments there are pushing digital transformation more aggressively.
Meanwhile, in low- and middle-income countries, DCTs could be a game changer, but infrastructure gaps remain a major barrier. In regions where reliable internet or logistics networks are inconsistent, decentralized models need creative adaptations, things like SMS-based patient check-ins or localized courier systems. If those challenges can be solved, DCTs could democratize access to trials in a way traditional site-centric models never could.
Another lesson from early adopters is the importance of resilience. During the pandemic, DCTs surged because they offered a way to keep trials running when sites were closed. But once restrictions lifted, some sponsors reverted to traditional methods. The ones who stuck with decentralized models often cited resilience as the main benefit. When you have a decentralized framework in place, you're less vulnerable to disruptions, whether it's a pandemic, a natural disaster, or even a local site closure.
That resilience also extends to recruitment and retention. Studies have shown that patients are more likely to enroll and stay enrolled when trials are flexible. If you reduce travel, simplify data capture, and give patients real-time feedback, you cut down on dropout rates. That's huge because recruitment and retention remain two of the biggest cost drivers in clinical research.
And yet, there's still hesitation in some corners of the industry. Certain therapeutic areas like oncology or advanced surgical trials are slower to decentralize because of the complexity of procedures or the need for close monitoring. But even in those areas, hybrid approaches are creeping in: remote follow-ups, home-based lab draws, digital patient diaries. The message here is that decentralization isn't all or nothing. It's a spectrum, and every trial can find its balance point.
Another fascinating trend is the rise of data convergence. As sponsors collect more data directly from patients, they're realizing that the boundaries between clinical trial data and real-world data are blurring. A wearable might track heart rate variability for a study endpoint, but the same data could also inform broader epidemiological research. Regulators are watching this closely because the potential is enormous. But so are the risks of overextending data beyond its intended use.
Finally, there's a cultural shift happening inside companies. Moving to DCTs isn't just about adopting new tools, it's about changing how teams think and work. Clinical operations teams have to collaborate more closely with IT, data management, and patient engagement functions. That cross-functional integration is difficult, but when it works, it creates a more agile and patient-centered organization.
As we close this conversation, it's worth stepping back and recognizing just how transformative decentralized clinical trials could be for the future of drug and device development. This isn't just an operational shift. It's a fundamental reimagining of how we connect science with patients.
DCTs are pushing the industry to move beyond brick and mortar constraints, to think about access in global terms, and to embrace digital tools that bring trials directly into people's homes. That shift isn't without its challenges, whether it's regulatory alignment, technology maturity, patient equity, or data security, but every one of those hurdles represents an opportunity to build something better than what we had before.
The real question now is sustainability. Can decentralized approaches become a lasting part of the clinical research ecosystem rather than just a temporary fix born out of the pandemic? Early evidence suggests yes. Sponsors are reporting faster enrollment, lower dropout rates, and richer data sets. Regulators are signaling growing acceptance. Patients are voicing appreciation for trials that meet them where they are. The momentum is there. It's about making sure we don't lose it.
And the companies that will lead in this space are the ones that think holistically. It's not enough to add an e-consent form here or a wearable there. True decentralization requires integration, coordinating data streams, aligning with global regulators, training staff, and most importantly, building trust with patients. Done right, DCTs can make trials not only more efficient, but also more representative, inclusive, and impactful.
At EMA International, this is exactly where we step in. Our team works with sponsors, CROs, and technology providers to design decentralized strategies that balance innovation with compliance. From regulatory guidance and digital readiness assessments to patient engagement planning and quality system integration, we help organizations navigate this shift with confidence.
Because at the end of the day, decentralized trials aren't just about technology, they're about people. They're about making research more accessible, more resilient, and ultimately more human. And if we get this right, the ripple effect won't just be faster trials. It will be therapies that reach patients sooner, safer, and with greater equity than ever before.
If your organization is considering decentralized models, or if you're already piloting one and want to strengthen your approach, we'd love to connect. You can learn more at emmainternational.com or reach us directly at info@emmainternational.com.
Thank you for joining us on today's deep dive. We'll continue bringing you conversations on the innovations, regulations, and strategies shaping the future of life sciences. Until next time, stay safe, stay compliant, and stay innovative.